Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Football Talk from the Yorkshire Post, where we'll be discussing some of the latest talking points from the world of football with members of our football writing team. On this week's episode, we're joined by Chief Football Writer for the Yorkshire Post, Stuart Rayner, and Football Writer for the Yorkshire Post, Leon Wobschall, to discuss all of the latest developments affecting our local clubs. Don't forget you can keep up to date with all the football news across Yorkshire and beyond by logging onto our website at yp.sport@nationalworld.com, as well as checking out our various Twitter feeds, the main one being at YP Sport. If you search for Yorkshire Post Sport, Yorkshire Post Football, or even Sheffield Sport on Facebook, you can find us there as well. And if you have any questions for our writers, you can get in touch using those various Twitter or Facebook pages, or email us directly with the subject matter as Football Talk Podcast at yp.sport@nationalworld.com.
YorkshirePost.co.uk.
As mentioned earlier in the intro, this week we're joined by Chief Football Writer for the Yorkshire Post, Stuart Rayner, and Football Writer for the Yorkshire Post, Leon Wobschall. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Morning. Right, let's start this week's episode by looking at the Steel City derby, which saw Sheffield United come away with all 3 points in a 3-1 victory. And in the process, they confirmed Sheffield Wednesday's relegation to League One. Now, it's never nice to see a club get relegated. However, in sort of a weird way, do you think that the Owls fans will have sort of welcomed this outcome, seeing as they now know that their fate has been sealed, Stuart?
Well, there's something to be said. You see it a lot from the relief a team gets when they go down. The weight's lifted on their shoulders. But in this particular case, the one day of the calendar year you didn't want to go down was the day you were at Bramall Lane. That's the salt in the wound. You know, it's just been one of those seasons for Sheffield Wednesday where just about anything that could go wrong has gone wrong, and this kind of put the tin lid on it. I mean, you had a situation really where I think, in all honesty, a lot of Owls fans were probably hoping on Saturday that West Brom won and they got relegated a day earlier, because it was just a matter of time. We've been saying on this podcast, and everybody in football has been saying, that it was an absolute racing certainty that Sheffield Wednesday were going to go down for a very long time now. So it's not, in that sense, it's not a massive deal, but you just don't want to do it in front of the other lot. It doesn't matter what football rivalry it is. They're obviously going to spend the time gloating, and I wouldn't have a go at Sheffield United fans for that. It's just how we are as football fans. You revel in your opponent's misery like that. But yeah, just to go down like that. The good thing, the slight shaft of light in all this gloom from a Sheffield Wednesday perspective is that at least they did put up a fight in the game. When Sheffield United went ahead after 75 seconds, and when they scored the second inside 20 minutes, your mind started turning to record books and record scores and all that sort of thing, which I wasn't really expecting beforehand. But when it started like that, you thought maybe this will actually be one of those derbies where it is actually a big scoreline. But Calvin Phillips' red card really changed the game, and Sheffield Wednesday pounced on it with a goal quickly afterwards. And although Chris Wilder pointed out, and he was right really, that it didn't amount to much in terms of threat on Sheffield United's goal, the second half felt like a contest. It felt like a derby is supposed to feel, and that was at least something in a miserable season for Sheffield Wednesday. But really, you're grasping at straws at the moment with the way things have been for Wednesday. You can't. They're not blameless, but you can't load too much on the players, the manager. We all know where the fault lies for this. It's from Dave Chansiri and the way he's run the club, but it's really come back to bite them in the most horrible way possible. And now, instead of fighting relegation, they're fighting quite depressing things like not being the first team to go down with minus points and all these other sort of records that they don't want to break. It must be really demoralising as a Sheffield Wednesday fan. And I say I don't think many of them will be taking too much solace from the fact that at least they know they're relegated now. But hopefully it does lift a slight weight off the players. I'm not convinced it will, to be honest.
I think it was a bit of a no-win in some respect for Sheffield United. Everybody expected them to win. They did the job. They've still got they've got a faint sniff, stroke interest in sixth place. We'll have to wait and see there. I thought the telling stuff afterwards from Chris Wilder. I thought he was absolutely bang on in what he said about Sheffield Wednesday. Funnily enough, I listened to the interview. He had a lot of sympathy for Henrik Pedersen. You know, in terms of what he's had to put up with, he's had to front up week after week, month after month. He could have obviously left the club last summer. He's elected to stay on. You know, not just the day-to-day of preparing the team and getting the personnel. You know, as Wilder said, he's got to be the guy who's getting up, who's going into work, who's putting the smiling face onto the receptionist and the club staff to try and be that sort of public figure. You know, all the while knowing in the background that he's had the hardest job in football.
Yeah.
Bar none.
Yeah.
You know, what he's had to contend with has been staggering, and something that, you know, managers shouldn't have to put up with. I mean, everyone knows about the horrible numbers, but just to be competitive has been decent in the circumstances. You know, it's been an absolutely, since last summer, it's been utter chaos there, hasn't it? Really, you know, we've spoken about it many times. A grand old club. It's a terrible shame what's gone on there, and you know, credit to Pedersen. I mean, it is, as Stuart said, it is the salt in the wound, but seeing some of the discourse afterwards, it was quite encouraging, really. In the times we're living now, where it's so partisan between supporters, there's so much toxicity and animosity. And yeah, there's a natural rivalry, and obviously some of the scenes beforehand were unsavoury, but actually some of the interaction between the Wednesday and United fans I've not seen that much of it, but some of the stuff I've seen has been really sort of, yeah, I think it's been quite positive, really. A lot of Sheffield United fans have been, there is some sympathy there. Obviously, there's the Mickey taking and all that, but I think they understand that the situation that Wednesday have been in has been utterly chaotic. It's been a bad look for football. It's been a bad look for football in the Steel City, a historic football city. So that is, I found that quite good for the soul in some respects. It's not been just the traditional, you know, hammering a team, kicking a team when they're down. And I thought Chris Wilder spoke very well. And you know, sometimes it takes an out the other side to sort of really highlight the issues that have gone on there. And I thought he really did in that, in how he spoke afterwards. I thought he hit the nail on the head, and he spoke like a good football man and a Sheffielder as well.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, you know, this isn't just a Sheffield Wednesday problem. You know, in the same way that Leeds' financial meltdown at the turn of the millennium was kind of a bit of a warning to other clubs, and was probably a big factor in things like relegation clauses in contracts. So this situation has got to be a warning for football as a whole about, you know, regulation and getting the right owners and sort of monitoring these owners once they're in the door, not after they're in the door, not just once they get through it and that sort of thing. It's happened to Sheffield Wednesday this time, but it could easily happen to any other club. No club's immune from a bad owner coming in and you know, doing this. And in all fairness, I think certainly in the early days, I think it was an owner who came in with a bit of money and good intentions. But still, we've got to this point, and it's absolutely destroyed, as Leon said, a grand old football club. And it's, you know, what it's done to the supporters. Leon quite rightly mentions everything that Henrik Pedersen's gone through and the fact that he's stuck it out. But, the same applies to the players as well. All the players who were there in the summer could have walked because of wages not being paid in the way that Josh Windass and Michael Smith did. They've stuck it out. Some of them lost patience, as Barry Bannon did. Don't think anybody could criticise him for that. But if, unless you're the most anti-Sheffield Wednesday supporter, it's really hard to see as a football person a club going through stuff like that. Yeah, big clubs get relegated. That's fine. That's just the price of, bad football or what have you. But to go through what they've been through and, obviously stuff of this level, you have people losing their jobs and all this sort of thing. It's something that obviously we've got a new regulator coming in. Football as a whole really needs to be very alert to this. And that's why it's taken a long time to get the new Sheffield Wednesday owner over the line, but they really have to make the right choice and get the right person because they just cannot afford. I mean, for this to happen again anywhere would be bad. For it to happen again at Sheffield Wednesday will be absolutely disastrous. So hopefully the fact that Sheffield Wednesday inevitably go on to break all these records for worse this and worse that keeps it in people's minds so that, there is a real focus on getting proper owners, properly monitored, and ultimately, in the longer term, the whole sort of distribution of money needs to be sorted out so that Championship clubs don't feel forced into this situation where they basically have to be run badly as a business to feel like they can be ambitious in that division.
Yeah. They football-wise, they just never had a chance, did they?
No,
not
at all.
They didn't just have one hand tied behind their back. They had two hands and they had both legs, really.
That's right.
If they'd have managed to stay up with everything going on, it would have been the biggest achievement ever in football. It was never gonna happen. The thing for Sheffield Wednesday this season has always been about, as Stuart said, is hopefully getting the right people and mechanisms in place to run that football club. Relegation is just, that's just by the by, really, isn't it? Really, it's about rebooting a football club, which will take time, and we've seen many examples of big clubs in League One taking time to find the feet. It was no cakewalk for Wednesday, was it? The last time they were in there,
as well. United as well.
Yeah, the important thing is just getting that. It's going to take a fair bit of time, a few seasons, to get that football club and everything about it back on an even keel, and then they can think about going upwards. Yeah. It's a blow to the pride this season, obviously, but there's a massively bigger picture here at Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah. And Leon, the point Leon makes there is really important. They have to think about getting the structures right before they just think about bouncing back. If you just think, we'll throw everything at bouncing back, those problems don't get addressed. You'll end up in the same boat a couple of years. We've seen Sheffield Wednesday. They're not exactly a yo-yo club, but they have bobbed between these two divisions over the last few years through short-term thinking. It really needs a good, proper look at everything, not just the first team. And that's why it needs a good owner who's with a lot of patience to invest in the longer term. And I say once they get it right, we know the potential is there to have a lot of success, but you can't run before you can walk. There's a lot of work to do in the background, and say Sheffield United themselves, not to the same extent, but have been through that painful process of going down to League One, of really having to look hard at what they do and sort themselves out, and that was probably another element in their degrees of sympathy from the other side. They have been there, not to that extent, but they have been there. So yeah, a lot of work ahead, and I think it's going to be a long time. I don't even think it's going to be the start of next season before we see things properly turned around.
I mean, there's so much wrong with the football club, in terms of infrastructure,
exactly.
In terms of lots of other things as well. I mean, Chris Wilder was saying that they've fallen behind Sheffield United in terms of academy recruitment, every sort of metric you can sort of think of, really, and it's going to take some time there.
Yeah, I mean, if Sheffield Wednesday had a really good academy, I'm not saying it would have stayed up. because they probably wouldn't. But they might have a much better chance of being in plus points. But everything about it, even the fact they've been having to train at Hillsborough so much recently because of the state of the training pitches, it's just an indication of a club that's been utterly neglected. Fortunately, this situation has put them in the national focus and hopefully, focus his minds on doing the right thing, not just the shortcuts to get out of this.
Yeah. And next we turn our attention to the Yorkshire clash between Rotherham United and Doncaster Rovers, which saw the visitors leave the game with all 3 points following a 2-1 win. Now, what was your verdict on the performances from both sides, Stuart?
Yeah, well, this is another sort of two-parter like Bradford last week when it comes to Rotherham, because I was there on the Saturday and Leon was there on the Tuesday. But in terms of Saturday's game, it was a really strange one in the sense that I think Rotherham won their penalty after something like 26 seconds, scored it, and produced a really good first half performance. Duncan Watmore was making his first start for them. We know from his time at Middlesbrough what a good player he can be. He's a few years wiser on the back of that as well. He showed some real sort of leadership in that team. Josh Benson was starting for the first time since I think December. He was really good as well. But there were a couple of issues for Rotherham. One, you came away from that first half thinking they played really well. You looked at the numbers, and I think they'd only had one shot on goal, one shot on target, to show for it. And the other thing was that with Watmore and Benson, quite understandably, pushed out there because of injuries and because of the magnitude of the game, they always had to do the bulk of the work in the first half because those two were always going to struggle to last the distance. And the other thing is that, frankly, Doncaster Rovers were awful in the first half by their standards. I mean, Grant McCann said he thought it was perhaps the angriest he'd ever been at half time. And sometimes with a performance like that, you think your natural reaction is to think, well, they can't be that bad again in the second half. Well, they weren't. They brought on 3 subs, Glenn Middleton, Brandon Hanlon, and one other who'll come back to me, Harry Clifton, all of whom made a really big difference. They very quickly turned it around, got back into the game, won it 2-1, and there just seemed to be, as much as Doncaster grew, Rotherham confidence just seemed to completely erode, and not just the confidence of the players, but the confidence of the fans in specifically Matt Hamshaw. So it was a big win for Doncaster because of the history. 41 years since they've beaten Rotherham. Now, probably a better way to put it is that it was 14 games. But nevertheless, those players would have been here in 41 years, and that puts pressure on. First time they've done the double over them since 1950. Sorry, did I say 41 years since they've beaten Rotherham? 41 years since they've won it.
Away from home.
Yes, away from home, as Leon says. 1950 since they'd done the double over them. So there was pressure on Doncaster Rovers, but the way the game went, it's just a huge amount of pressure on Matt Hamshaw, and then they go in on the Tuesday night to Bradford, who were their yo-yo form. You just do not want to be going to Valley Parade at the moment, and just another difficult night for them, I think, Leon.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at Rotherham, and you'll have seen it as well, Stuart. They're just, I hope I'm wrong, but all the classic ingredients that you associate with a team who are going to get relegated are unfortunately there. Right. Really, they actually, I didn't think they played that badly at Bradford, but they really struggled to create chances. I think in part it was, I'll probably go on to Bradford a bit later, but they defended really well, Bradford. They didn't, and he made a telling point, Matt Hamshaw, and I agreed with him. He said it was like taking on a team of men, and I knew what he meant. Yeah, Bradford have got a lot of players who have got promotions on the CV. They've been around the block. They know how to manage games, and Rotherham sort of had one or two experienced players. A lot of players sort of starting out lacking that wool on the back almost, and you could tell on the night. And yeah, I mean, they certainly their effort and their endeavour suggests they're sort of playing for the manager, but you need more than that in a relegation fight, don't you? They lacked. I thought they lacked attacking teeth. There's a lot of other things. They've still got quite a few injuries. Stuart touched on the fact that they've got players who they've got to manage minutes as well. Benson and Watmore, they can't, especially in a 3-game week, they can't go 90.
No sure.
90 again. I look at that Rotherham side, they lack a spine, don't they, as well? They lack sort of 4 or 5 players who you can sort of hang your hat on week after week. And I'd say there was some half-decent performances. I thought the young lads at the back did okay. Baptiste had a good game. Benson showed flashes in the first half in particular, was trying to make things happen, but it's just sort of piecing it all together. And I thought the fans were quite good in the circumstances. I think Stuart heard the rancor a bit more on Saturday for the Donny game, but I thought they were, especially compared with the 7 days before at Burton when they really were. I think by all accounts the mood was toxic. They were getting on the back of the players and not just Matt Hamshaw. Mm-hmm. There was some good support, I thought, from the Rotherham fans who made it to West Yorkshire. They were behind the team. They weren't. I suppose that's symptomatic of the position Rotherham in. I mean, I've done this fixture a few times, and they usually sort of pack the side of the Midland Road, and there's a fair contingent in the Bradford end. But it was quite sparse. It was just one corner of the Midland Road, and there were probably about 600 or 700, perhaps if that. And that just shows how they've sort of how they've been struggling. And yeah, I just sort of look at them. If they made a decision with Hamshaw, would it change things? I don't know. I mean, there's an argument to suggest maybe leave it to the summer. You might, whether they decide to stick with Hamshaw, or they might have a better field of candidates to look for a replacement. I just think it reminds me a bit of Doncaster a few years ago. I just don't think it's bottomed out there yet, Rotherham. And this has sort of been a culmination of things. It's probably the 4th season in a row where they've struggled, isn't it? Ongoing issues with the injuries, recruitment. They're sort of through the kitchen sink at getting promoted in terms of recruitment last summer, and it's just not paid off, hasn't it? And they've got quite a lot of players there who are aging on decent money. There's probably quite a few of them who know they're probably going as well.
Yeah,
when they're out of contract, and that being playing in the back of mind of some players. There's other players who are just sort of starting out, they're feeling their way in the careers, they're needing direction, and I just think they need to sort of clear the decks this summer, don't they? And you want, from a Rotherham perspective, it's not ideal to go down, but I don't know. I think a year or two in League Two to really sort themselves out and build again and get a promotion, bit of joy back. Would that be the worst thing in the world? Not necessarily. But I don't know, there's an argument to say. I mean, you look at the clubs in League One next season, there'll be a lot of local games, and Rotherham might be decent league to be in from that regard. But it just looks to me a club that hasn't unfortunately yet bottomed out. There's issue with the owner. The owner's been there a while. He's not in the first flush of youth, I think it's fair to say. How is going forward? Is he going to be the man to sort of take Rotherham United again? You've got your doubts about that, really, haven't you? So there's a lot going on at that football club, and there's a lot of pointers that show to me why they are in that position. I mean, there's still, it's just, you look at it at the bottom, it's going to be a real dogfight, isn't it? There's 4 or 5 clubs. They can still, they've still got a sniff, but I think there's a lot to contend with there.
Like Sheffield Wednesday, there's a lot of underlying problems. So it needs a chairman who's who's prepared to deal with them, and maybe Tony Stewart is, but as Leon says, at his age, possibly not. It's a big ask to put all that effort in when the reward's going to be so far down the line. I think Rotherham at their best, to take the analogy of the first half of Saturday's game, Rotherham at their best can compete, I think, in that dogfight. The problem is too many of the best players are not on the pitch often enough. I mean, Leon talked about the spine. If Benson and Watmore were 40 match a season fit, that's two elements of your spine which will be really strong. The two young centre backs, good players, but they wanted, if Thomas Holmes had been the loan signing they wanted to be, they needed that sort of leader in central defence. If Jordan Hugill and Dan Gore had been fit, that spine would have looked a lot better. Yeah. And then on Saturday,
Joe Powell as well, the missing.
Joe Powell, yeah, absolutely. And then on Saturday, your goalkeeper who makes some great saves for them, made an absolute mess of a clearance. Luke Molyneux scores and pays for it with his place on Tuesday night. There's just, for different reasons, there's just nobody in that spine really who you can hang your hat on, and that's the issue. If you could have them fit and settle down, you'd be a lot more confident. But as it is, just judging by their CVs, they've loaned some really exciting young players, with a lot of talent about them. But players like that, they've got a much better chance of succeeding in a more solid, experienced environment. We've seen Harry Gray come off, to be fair, in his early games, but the others haven't as of yet. They will need patience, and there aren't the players there really buying them that time. Sometimes because of quality, but often just because they can't get on the field and stay there.
Yeah. I think hopefully he's a good guy, Matt Hamshaw. I've got a lot of time with him for him. I'm sure a lot of people will be wanting him to turn it round, but he sort of wonder if he was best. I think the person who was going to follow Steve Evans, would it be the best? I think it'd been better to be the next but one. Then he can sort of, rather than haven't hit. I don't think they've hit rock bottom yet. And the person who followed Evans, they'd spent massively, haven't they? They got relegated the previous season in the summer of 2024. It was all showbiz, and we're just back in League One. We're going for promotion, and they sort of gambled on black, and it's coming at red, hasn't it? Really, and spent a lot of money on players not in the going towards the sort of 28, towards the end of the careers.
Not robust enough, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it never happened. It didn't happen for him in that season, and then you get the legacy, don't you? Obviously, the person who followed, they're tied in with a lot of players on big contracts. There's got to be some element of realism and retrenchment, hasn't there? Which is what happened. And I just think really until Rotherham can start again and get a lot of those senior players off the books, there's been I don't think it's sort of telling tales out of school. There's been a lot of talk about how much money Jordan Hugh was on, for instance, but in fairness, he wasn't bought by Steve Evans. He was bought when the club were in the Championship and needed a Championship-ready centre-forward. But there's other players as well on money. Until there's a sort of blank canvas for the manager where the decks are sort of cleared, it's always going to be an almighty struggle there, isn't it? And, a lot of the ideas and things that Hamshaw talks about, Rotherham need to do. They really need to sort out the recruitment. It's been a historic problem for quite a few years there. There's been not enough players. The pathway between the academy to the first team hasn't been flowing nowhere near enough, hasn't it? There's one or two starting to come through, some shafts of light, but that's the thing that really needs to be addressed if Rotherham are going to grow forward on the football side of the operation. They need to start getting more players, young homegrown players, through the system. So ultimately, if it's successful in a year or two, you may sell one or two a year, generate your funds. That's how it works. I think, say, Hamshaw gets the big the bigger picture of the football club, but obviously the short term is the fact that they're having the 4th rotten season in a row, and there's a good chance that they could go back down to the 4th tier for the first time in about 12 or 13 years. So I just sort of wonder if being the next one after Steve Evans would have been more advantageous, but we'll have to see.
I think what they really need, and forget job titles, they need an actual manager rather than a head coach. And that's not just about the personality of the guy in charge. That's about what he's allowed to do. I think Matt Hamshaw would have loved to have been more of a manager and take a bigger hand in recruitment and the things that Leon's talking about, the youth pathways and all that sort of thing. But it needs somebody to really grasp it and run the whole operation. And say, who's to say whether how Hamshaw would have fared at that? But somebody needs to be given that leeway, because the whole thing needs looking at by one person rather than different people trying to do their different things. They need to sort out get the medical backup better. They need to get the training facilities better, but they also need to sign more robust players. As Leon says, you can't have players who are just not going to be physically able to give you more than this or that. They need to sort out the pathways. They need to do an awful lot. So it probably
staffing problems behind the scenes as well. I don't think
that's right. Yeah,
well catered for as a lot of football clubs in terms of backroom staff as well.
Yeah, I say when we talk about medical staff, again, it's not necessarily that those guys aren't good enough. It's, are there enough of them? Are they in the right places? All these sort of things. So it's a big job, and I say it needs somebody to have the time to sort of look at it and do it. And they should be giving everything they can to fight relegation. But if they are in League Two, maybe that just gives them a little bit of an opportunity to step back and focus a bit more on that sort of thing. But another South Yorkshire club, unfortunately, that needs to take a good look and just start again. And if they can, if they can get it right, there's lots of optimism. But you can't just take this sticking plaster approach, because, as Leon says, it's been 4 pretty miserable years now, and it's going to take a lot of turning around.
Yeah. I think this is a quick word for Doncaster as well. I mean, it's been a good story there, hasn't it? 2026 so far. I mean, you look at it over Christmas. I think they'd lost around 4 in a row, didn't they? You just really really feared for them, and it was going to be a huge start to the new year, not just in terms of the games they had, but in terms of the recruitment. They sort of had to get that right, and it's turned around. It's been good to see. Brad McCann stuck to the mantra of his 22 game league table. That's energised everyone at the training ground, and they're doing quite nicely, thank you, aren't they? And I think if you look at the league table starting in early January, they'd be quite well placed. I've not checked out, but in terms of the form guide in the division, they'll be pretty high up, I would have thought, won't they? They'll be certainly in the top 10, and a huge psychological fillip. I mean, I know a lot of Doncaster supporters, and they're desperate to see the team win in Rotherham. Major thing, and Stuart touched on, I think the 14 times they've played there since March '85. They'd lost 13 and drawn the other one.
Yeah,
so it must be the year for Voodoo's ending, because obviously Rotherham won for the first time, I think, since 69-70 in the league at Barnsley, and Bradford beat Huddersfield for the first time in about 25 years in Bradford. So yeah, maybe it's the season for that. But yeah, there's been a lot of impressive work at Doncaster in the start of the new year. They've got a lot to look forward to, haven't they? They're in a semi-final of the trophy. One win from Wembley. They've got Stockport next Tuesday, and some big old games in the league as well. Not just the Rotherham derby. They've had the Huddersfield a double header, beat them on penalty in the trophy, and they've backed it up with a league win. Some big old league games. They've got a lot of games at home as well. So, for the supporters to get the teeth. I think something like 7 out of 10 at home, and they've got a really, really busy March coming up. And McCann's spoken about it quite a few times. I think he's spoken to not just myself, Stuart, as well, how everyone's going to everyone's going to have to buy in and put their hand up. It's going to be a real sort of effort. And obviously, it wasn't going right in the first half at Rotherham, and he didn't sit on his hands. Grant McCann, he made 3 telling changes. So I think everyone in that squad is going to play a part, and it's looking good. I've been impressed by Niall Byrne. I thought he was very good against Huddersfield in the league game, and by all accounts he was decent at Rotherham, and probably should have had a goal as well from what I saw. So there's encouragement for Doncaster, and it's when they look back at this season, hopefully they'll maybe a Wembley bonus, staying up in League One, which would be a decent achievement given where they were at Christmas. And like I say, doubles over Rotherham United don't come along very often.
No. Yeah, I mean that squad's going to be massive for them, because I think it's eight games in 25 days. On Saturday they had Okoronkwo injured, Zadna Clark still hadn't come back from his injury. Adelakun, wasn't on it. Billy Sharp, they couldn't get into the game, but there was that depth there to go to extra levels that Rotherham didn't have, and that depth is going to be absolutely crucial for them. Yeah. And it's a familiar story for Doncaster. They were talking at the back end of last year. We're always better in the second half of the year, and Grant McCann was smiling on Saturday, saying, "I love this time of year when it gets a bit warmer and the games have a bit more on them." They just look like they're really hitting their straps, and continue. Sorry,
I would say for the third season in a row as well. I mean, you look at
exactly
this season, still obviously last season, when they really took a march to the League Two title, and the year before that was incredible, wasn't it? When they went from relegation candidates to promotion contenders, winning 10 in a row. So it's something about this time of year, isn't it? But I mean, a quick word. Obviously, we'd spoken about Rotherham the other night. Bradford, it's just home sweet home, isn't it? 8 wins out of 9.
What does that make away from them?
Yeah.
What a story! I mean, no one won more games at home in 2025 than Bradford in the EFL. 19 wins, which is just incredible, isn't it? And they've shown good bounce back ability, haven't they? Apart from really the sort of week where they had, I think what it is now, is it Cardiff, Huddersfield and Lincoln, when they took a few blows on the nose in succession. They've generally had a strong show, haven't they? When they've sort of had a setback, they've come back relatively quickly. It was a disappointing day by all accounts at Wimbledon. From not just the players, that I think the bus drivers as well. Not getting there on time, and you hardly ever see an away team win when they arrive late, do you? Really? So that was probably a real bad day at the office there. Obviously, there was a bit of Graham Alexander got a little bit of stick, funny enough, for the amount of changes he made, but the changes he made for the game on Tuesday were all on point. He brought Sarcevic point and back, Aidan Baldwin as well, and there's just a reliability about Bradford at home. They can win in different ways. I did the Peterborough game the other week, and they were absolutely brilliant. Chances galore, could have won 6-7-0. Stewart did the Stockport game. That was a bit more of an arm wrestle by all accounts. A little bit similar to the Rotherham game. They got an early lead. It was another thing about Bradford is the amount of goal scorers they have. They don't have a 20 goal scorer, but they don't half share the goals around. Everyone's put their hand up. See, Matt Pennington scored his goal first for the club. All the centre halves have chipped in just across the pitch, and that's a good sign as well, I think. Being successful and and finding different ways to win. They're not conceding goals at the minute at home as well. If teams want to take them on in a basketball match, they're quite happy with that. You attack, we attack. Or if teams want to sort of sit in, they'll nick a goal and they'll manage games. I'm talking about those experienced players. Obviously, Max Power came back as well. So, it's a nice feeling to have that sort of resolute home form. It's a real Fortress Valley parade to sort of to fall back on, and they managed the game pretty well. Okay, Rotherham were a little bit limited in the final third, but yeah, it smacked of a team who were going to be up there at the end of the season.
Yeah,
I think the real puzzler with Bradford, Liam, is just how it's not translating away from them. 6 defeats in 7. Because if you said, right, I want you to build me a team that's going to be good away from home, you'd probably say, I want a team of men. I want a team with those gritty defensive qualities that Bradford have got.
Yeah.
So it's strange, really, because say the tools are there, it would seem anyway, and they were good away from home, or relatively good, certainly good enough away from home in the early part of the season.
They had some good wins, didn't they? Going to Cardiff and winning, they won at Stockport as well.
That's right. So it's not like they don't have it in them. It's just kind of gone away from them as it does with teams over the course of the season. But yeah. It's very strange because you do see them at home, as Leon says, they've got all the qualities in terms of winning in different ways. And, I really think, I don't think they're a defensive team, but there's a real defensive solidity about that team, if you get what I mean. They get a lot of clean sheets, and you just think they should be able to go away on the road and at least pick up draws. If you're winning at home, drawing away, that'll do really. But to win at home, lose away, it's you're leaving things open. Let's put it that way to missing out on the playoffs, which would be a real shame. But it's nothing to be too downbeat about because the home form is so good. But it does need a lot of thought to just crack this conundrum. And maybe it might be one of those, like a goal scorer goes 15 games without a goal, one goes in off his backside and suddenly he's scoring again. It might be the same, grab a lucky 1-0 win away from home and suddenly things turn. But it is a bit of a puzzler at the moment why there's such a big disparity.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of Graham Alexander. He's done a brilliant job. He has rotated this season. Yeah. Players. The one thing I'm a little bit puzzled by, and I don't necessarily agree with, but he's the manager and I'm not. I'm not a big fan of switching around your back three or your defensive unit. I always think just try and keep that the same if possible, and obviously unless suspensions and injuries interfere. Actually made some changes in that regard at Wimbledon, and in terms of the rotation, I always think it's better. Personally, I think everyone's like further up the pitch on the flanks. Obviously, players out wide are expending a lot of energy. We'll see the sort of sense in maybe switching things around a little bit there. And when you might have a couple of 3-game weeks, or even a number 10 or 2. But I always think in terms of your back line, try and keep that as orderly. And if they're doing okay, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that's probably one little issue I've had with Bradford this season, but it's not a massive issue considering they're having a second great season in a row, really.
Yeah. And the next fixture that I wanted to quickly examine was the all-Yorkshire clash between Huddersfield Town and Barnsley. Now, this saw the Terriers return to winning ways and strengthen their position in the League One playoff spots. However, it also meant that Barnsley missed the opportunity to put some much more needed space between themselves and the pack fighting for survival. What were your thoughts on the game, Leon?
Yeah, I mean, it probably played out in a way that most beforehand may have expected, really. I mean, Barnsley, they're a good watch going forward. They've got some eye-catching players. They play the right way. They're on the front foot. But, I mean, I put in a match report. I probably gave them a bit of a kicking, to be quite honest. But so be it. That they're a nice, easy on the ice side. But to me, they're not a deadly serious side. They'll always give you a chance. And even though they were leading thanks to a brilliant goal from David McGoldrick, how many times have we seen that in his career where he sort of gets half a yard on the left, puts in one of a right foot, sort of bent it into the top corner, a wonderful goal. And there were some good passages of play from Barnsley in the first half, but they said before the game, Conor Hourihane was speaking about wanting his side to. They played at Bolton away. They played at Cardiff away. The games had gone away from them in the first half. Some poor concessions. They came back into the game, but it was too late. So they sort of managed that in the first half. They were okay. They were okay defensively. Not too many alarms. Huddersfield lacked a bit of quality, I thought, in the final third. But games last two halves, don't they? And you always knew that Huddersfield had got quite a few attackers on the bench. You thought at some point he's going to call for Ryan Hardy. Actually, the marquee recruit on deadline day. He's been brought in for a reason. He's not fully fit yet, but he can still nick you a goal. And before that, it was a soft equaliser that Barnsley conceded. There was too much space to put the cross in. The runner in Ryan Ledson wasn't tracked, and the goalkeeping left a fair bit to be desired. So it was a poor goal, and then it was a good finish from Hardy for the winner. But they just give you. They're a nice side to watch, Barnsley. He's developed. They've got an identity. You can say that about. You talk about teams having identities. Barnsley have that. They're a good watch. They'll attack teams, but they've got a soft underbelly. They've had a problem defensively for the best part of probably 3 seasons, really. I think they conceded something like mid-60s in terms of goals last year. I think the season before that, it was quite high 50s as well. And this year, it was his 50th game in charge on Saturday. Conor Hourihane conceded 100 goals, so that sort of tells you a bit of a story defensively. And they're probably on course to concede about, the way it's going, about 70 this season as well. I think before Tuesday, it was only Leyton Orient who conceded more. But you flip that around, there was only sort of 2 or 3 that had scored more as well. So it just shows Barnsley, they're an entertaining side to watch. They're developing young players, the Clearys of this world, the Yoga Nathans, but they lack that sort of defensive resolution to be really treated seriously. And I know what you mean, Mark, about sort of getting the points away to be away from trouble. But you looked at that before the game on sort of Saturday. There were 8 points behind Huddersfield. Okay, 8 points. They had 4 games in hand. Yeah. So if they'd have won that, it looks to me there's possibly one slot. If you're trying to be sort of ultra positive, there's possibly going to be one slot that's open to a few. It's a bit like the Championship as well, isn't it? There's that 6th place. If some team comes through on the rails, there could potentially. It might not happen, but it might. If Barnsley had won that, there'd have only been 5. There'd have been 5 points behind Huddersfield, with 3 games in hand. That's doable, isn't it? Yeah. When you think we're not even in March yet. So, I just had a little bit of a go. I just think that you can't treat Barnsley totally seriously. You wonder how much behind the scenes the club actually want. Do they really want to get promoted?
I think that's the key.
Or is the modus operandi basically developing and selling players, which they're quite good at? They've got money for DKD. They'll possibly sell Cleary in the summer. It's sort of thing. That's the sort of big thing for them. Huddersfield weren't terrific, but they kept at it. And I don't know what Stuart thinks. I think with Barnsley, the opposition managers, part of the team talk will be, they're a nice side to watch. They're good on the front foot, but they'll always give you a chance. And I think that is a bit of a bottom line with Barnsley.
Yeah, I think that's the nail on the head. And I think that's a feeling that's set above Conor Hourihane and his players.
Yeah.
I think it penetrates the whole football club if there's sort of this wishy-washy feeling of we're just happy to be making up the numbers in League One. And unfortunately, you get that impression for them. From a Huddersfield perspective, just nice to see, one swallow doesn't make a spring, but nice to see a big name striker coming in and having some early success there, because it's been a bit of a graveyard for expensive forwards certainly in 2025. Big opportunity now for Huddersfield runner games against teams down there at the bottom. Wigan and Rotherham, the next 2 need to kick on now. You couldn't.
The record's been good as well against teams around the bottom.
That's right. You couldn't accuse them of not being serious. What they've not been able to do is, as we talked about in more length last week, is back it up. So now they've got three games. Game after game after Rotherham is Port Vale. They just need to get 9 points from those 3 games, really, sort of 7 as a minimum, I would say, to show that, look, we are really serious. Their position slightly inflated by playing more games. They just need to cement it and say, show we mean business.
Yeah.
And the good thing as well, quickly, 10 goals have scored under Liam Manning, 8 in the second half. So they're staying strong in games. I think that's a good quality to have at this time of year.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And finally for this week, I will turn to Stuart for his Team of the Week before looking to Leon for his Player of the Week. So, Stuart, who have you decided deserves the Team of the Week title this week?
Well, I think quite rightly all the talk of the around the Sheffield derby was about Sheffield Wednesday, but I do think we need to highlight, apart from the stupidity of Calvin Phillips getting sent off, it was a good professional job done by Sheffield United to get that win. Yeah. I think for Sheffield Wednesday, it mattered how they lost. If you know, see what I mean, they had to go down with a fight. For Sheffield United, they just had to win. There was so much expectation of them. It was such a mismatch, and you know they've got catching up to do in the race. So they just had to win, and you have to pat them on the back for that. Got to mention Harrogate again, another good draw against the team up there. I mean, Bromley having a great season, so for Harrogate to get a 0-0 draw from that was big as they try and just ease their way out of the relegation battle, and they look like they're moving in the right direction. But I think as Team of the Week, I'm going to go with Doncaster Rovers and turn a blind eye to how poor they were in the first half. We said it a lot in last week's podcast. You have bad times in the course of a Football League season. It's about how you put them right. The way the subs came on, the way they sort of refocused and pounced on a couple of mistakes. And as Leon alluded to earlier, it fits into the picture of the whole 2026 from them. They're really moving in the right direction. They're going to really be physically tested, and the squad's going to be really tested by March's schedule. But they're looking in good shape to pull away and really move up the table and build some momentum to go into next season, hopefully.
Yeah. And Leon, who have you decided deserves the Player of the Week title?
Yeah, there's one or two runners and riders. I did the derby on. I think I've been doing derbies every week, I think. But I did the one on Saturday, and Radinho Bolka. I think the good thing for him is he's getting a run of games, isn't he? For probably the first time in a good long while. I mean, everyone knows he's a good defender on his day. Just getting that run of games. He was good. I thought Mully Wallace as well. He had a solid game. They both made a couple of good last-ditch tackles and looked a decent 2 against Barnsley. David McGoldrick, he's in a real hot run at the minute, isn't he? 7 goals in 8 games, and what a wonderful goal it was against Huddersfield. The sort of goal he scored lots of times in his career. I remember a couple of years ago he did exactly the same for, I think it was Notts County at Bradford, and he's done it many times over, that sort of goal. So 38 years young and still, in double figures again for the season. Anton Statt, he's having Stuart's seen more of him than me. He's having a decent season, isn't he? And he picked out a choice goal for Leeds at Aston Villa. Disappointing with obviously the concession at the end, but still a very, very good point for Leeds, really. He draws away from home at the likes of Villa and Chelsea. You shouldn't. They're not to be sniffed at. Curtis Till, he was great. He used to play for Rotherham. He showed what he brings to the party, and probably what Bradford missed when he was injured as well in the autumn, the first part of the winter. Real strong performance of leadership. I thought on Tuesday night, another derby as well. Ryan Hardy, touched on him. He likes this time of year. Last season for Plymouth, I think he scored 10 goals from February the 1st onwards, so I'm sure Huddersfield Town's recruitment staff probably knew about that when they were thinking of a candidate to come in, a finisher, to win them games at the business end of the season. There's not many, they couldn't pick many better candidates really than Hardy, and he's come back from his injury. He's he's not 100% yet, and Liam Manning's having to manage his minutes a little bit, but he's up and running, and just give a little glimpse of what he can do. But I'm going to keep in the Doncaster theme. It's the big week for them. It's the derby wins over Huddersfield and Rotherham, and a bit of a where were you moment for the supporters there. Said they never won at the New York Stadium, and the last win being at Millmoor in 85. I've mentioned Niall Byrne. He's looking at a good horses for courses signing in Doncaster's position. They needed a defensive leader, and he's coming in his partnership with Jay McGrath. He made a mistake for the penalty, but he was pretty good after that from what I saw. McGrath Stewart, wasn't he?
Yeah. He struggled, Liam, for about the first 15 minutes or so, but he really wrestled it back. And like the team as a whole, you have setbacks, but it's how you recover for them. And having a leader like Byrne alongside him must be huge in that respect.
Yeah, so worthy of mentioning him. Glenn Middleton as well. I've seen little bits. I did the game at Huddersfield earlier this season in the league, and he was brilliant in the first half. And he sort of changed the game, didn't he? Well, he did. And the other two, it was a lovely bit of wing craft to get away from Rafferty and set up the goal. There's definitely a player in there. I've not seen nothing, but it's just getting that. I suppose wingers lack a bit of consistency at times, but he's certainly got the skills. But I think the one I'm going to go to is probably a bit of a go-to for us both over the last few years is Luke Molyneux. It was a difficult. I sort of watched his. He obviously got the penalty in midweek against Huddersfield, which he'd missed the penalty in the trophy. So he showed some guts to sort of step up and put that away. And his goal was a really good finish, I thought.
It was actually, although it was laid on a plate for him, it wasn't. So it wasn't easy to finish, was it?
I mean, there were a few defenders sort of guarding a bit of the goal, weren't they? And I mean, he showed he's got the creative talents. He's a bit of a throwback in some respect. Drops his shoulder, he can go inside, go outside. He can bring numbers with it as well, can't he? In terms of not just assists, but chipping in with goals. And huge player for Doncaster Rovers, and he'll be now remembered as the player who won them a first. Well, not just him, but he scored the goal to win them the first derby in Rotherham for over 4 decades. So I'll go for Luke Molyneux.
YorkshirePost.co.uk.
Many thanks to Stuart Rayner and Leon Wobschall, who will doubtless join us again soon for more discussions on the Yorkshire football scene. But don't forget you can keep up to date with all the football news across Yorkshire and beyond by logging on to our website at yp.sport@nationalworld.com, or if you search for Yorkshire Post Sport, Yorkshire Post Football, or even Sheffield Sport on Facebook, you can find us there as well. If you have any questions for our writers, you can get in touch using those various Twitter or Facebook pages, or email us directly with the subject matter as Football Talk Podcast at yp.sport@nationalworld.com. As ever, many thanks for listening, look after yourselves, and bye for now.